the meaning of the term sanitation and how sanitation can be achieved. There are basically two methods, either the conservancy method or the water carriage system. Then we looked at important terms which come in sanitary engineering. So special attention to be paid to terms like sullage, sewage, sewer, sewerage system. And these are the terms that are commonly coming into picture when we talk about sanitary engineering or wastewater engineering. Then we looked at sewerage systems, where we understood that there are three different types of sewerage systems. We have the separate system, the combined system, the partially separate or partially combined system. Separate system wherein we have two sets of pipelines which carry, one which carries the sanitary waste or the sewage and the other which carries the stormwater. In the combined system, both the stormwater and the sewage goes in the same pipeline. Whereas in the partially separate system, the sewage flows through a closed pipeline and a part of the stormwater is allowed to mix with the sewage, and the remaining stormwater is just allowed to go through open gutters. So each of these systems have their own advantages and disadvantages based on the situation, the area, the type of rainfall experienced in that area, the monetary or the financial capacity of the governing municipality or corporation, based on many of these factors, and also on the area where you have wide roads or network of roads are properly laid out. If the roads are congested, all these factors will be taken into consideration before a system is being decided on. So that was basically what we saw in the last class. So today we will come to what is called as the various types of wastewater flow that is seen in the case of any area or any town. So basically, the total wastewater can be divided into two categories. One, we call it as the dry weather flow, which we use the abbreviation as DWF. And the second part of it is the stormwater. Okay, so now when we define the dry weather flow, we call it as the quantity of wastewater that flows through a sewer in dry weather when there is no stormwater in the sewer. The dry weather flow, sometimes we call it as sanitary sewage also. That I think we referred to that yesterday. All the sewage, because it is polluting in nature, we call it as sanitary sewage. So in the case of dry weather flow, it is only the sewage or the sanitary sewage that flows. In this, you can have domestic wastewater that is coming from your households, which is a mixture of your water closet waste and wastewater from your kitchen, bathrooms, etc. There is industrial wastewater that can come from manufacturing processes. It can be wastewater coming in from public facilities like hotels, cinema theaters, railway stations, okay, sometimes even street cleaning waters. All these come into that. And also, sometimes there is infiltration of groundwater into the pipelines. That also comes as part of the dry weather flow. So infiltration nobody can control because the pipeline is laid inside the earth underground, and sometimes you have high water tables or heavy rains, and if there are leakages in your joints or pipeline, there could be some amount of water seeping in through these things. So a net sum of all this is what we call by the term dry weather flow. Okay. Now, when we say wet weather flow, it includes the storm water also that comes into the picture. So the whatever waste is coming. Along with that, when you have the storm water coming into the picture, then we call it as wet weather flow. And there are certain factors which affect the dry weather flow. So dry weather flow is very, very important because you design a system, especially in your case of your separate system, etc. The size of the pipeline is very much decided on how much dry weather flow is expected. And there are various factors that affect the dry weather flow. So let's look at the first one, the rate of water supply. So we already studied about water demands. We have domestic demand, we have industrial demand, we have commercial demand. Okay, so for all this, water is being supplied. And definitely, we know that more the quantity of water that is supplied, more is going to be the wastewater generated. And I think yesterday I mentioned, and on average, we consider that 80% of the water supplied comes out as wastewater. So the quantity of wastewater produced from a community will always depend on the rate of supply per capita. This per capita demand of whatever that is there. So there is some amount of water lost, okay, which goes into the ground and things like that. But even then, taking into consideration all the water that is lost, we expect almost 80% of the waste, the water that is being supplied, gets back into the sewer lines as wastewater. So this value, you should keep it in your mind at all times. So when you are given the calculations to, the problems to calculate, you will be given what is the, say, per capita demand or the population of the place. Okay, so you already know if you are in a city or if you are in a semi-urban area or if you are in a rural area, what is the per capita water supply, that is in liters per capita per day, that you can assume. So knowing the population of that place and knowing your per capita, you will be able to calculate the water requirement. And from that, you will compute 80% of that estimated as the wastewater that is generated. So the first factor that will be affecting the rate of water or affecting the dry weather flow is the rate of water supply. And already we studied about computing of how the arithmetic method, geometric method, etc. to compute your population and all those things. So just if an open question is given to you, then the requirement of present population, if you are given and you are asked to design for future, you should keep all these things in mind. Nobody will tell that again. So you need to know that you need to compute the population for, say, a 30 years design period, and then calculate the water supply, and from that the wastewater generated. So that is the first point that comes into picture. And then in the second factor, the population growth, we always assume that the population is growing. Whichever method you use to compute the population, whether it is arithmetic, geometric, whatever it is, we assume that the population is always growing, and therefore the requirement of water is growing, and based on that, the dry weather flow is also going to be increasing. The next is the type of area to be served. Suppose you have a city wherein it is mostly residential areas. Okay, then you will have a certain requirement of water, definitely, because it is for the domestic purpose that you will be supplying the water. But if you have a city wherein there are larger establishments as commercial spaces or there are industrial estates within that particular area, then the rate of usage of water will vary, and hence the quantity of wastewater will also be affected. So the sewage flow rates can be determined after studying the various types of industrial activities that are happening. So certain industries, for example, in Bangalore, if you see, we have a large variety of industries. if we consider the major chunk of these industries to be the software industries, then they are not going to be generating excessive amounts of wastewater. But if there is a manufacturing unit, okay, or automobile, servicing and those type of industry, in those cases the that is wastewater generated is going to be more. So the area to be served can be decided upon uh, based on what type of residences, commercial and industrial areas are existing in that particular uh, area under consideration. The next point is the infiltration of groundwater. Uh, like I told you earlier, we are laying the pipelines inside the ground, and there are two components to that. One is you may get the surrounding water entering into the pipeline. Okay, so that way the volume of your liquid flowing inside the pipeline increases. But also at the same time, sometimes the leakages in the pipeline may cause your sewage which is flowing inside the pipeline to go outside into the surrounding soil. So that way you will be losing about some amount of wastewater into the surrounding soil. So infiltration of water into the sewer depends on various factors. For example, if your pipe, that the sewer pipe that you have laid is below the ground, and in particular areas of the ground, your groundwater level is quite high, that is, there is a chance for more infiltration. The size of the sewer also matters. Okay, the length of sewer through areas where chances of water seepage are more, and especially during heavy rains and things like that, even through minute cracks, or through the valves, if the valves are not fitted properly and things like that, water, the external water could seep in. The nature of the soil where the sewer is being laid, that is also another factor that will affect. Now, when they are laying the pipelines, there are several joints and the workmanship that is being done in order to make these joints watertight. That will be again another factor that is going to affect how much of infiltration is happening. Also, sewer materials. Some materials may have some porosity or flaws or cracks in them, and because of which the chance of seepage of water is going to be more into the pipeline. So I hope the word dry weather flow is very clear, and the factors that will affect the dry weather flow. Now, we talked about dry weather flow, but there is a very big component of storm water that comes into picture. And this is very much evident in areas where we expect rain. In some places, we will have rain throughout the year at different points of time. So in such places, the component of storm water cannot be excluded, because it is a very big component of the flow that comes through the pipeline. Now, like we looked at the dry weather flow, let us look at what are the factors that will affect stormwater flow. The first one is the rainfall intensity and duration. Now, what does it mean by, or what is the difference between the duration of rainfall and the intensity of rainfall? See, you may have rain lasting for very short duration. Say it rains for 10 minutes, but at that 10 minutes time, you have very heavy rain, say 100 mm in per hour, in usually in mm per hour or centimeter per hour. You would have seen rainfall data, and some of you may have done even some analysis for your PBL and all on rainfall. So we talk about rainfall in mm per hour, centimeter per hour. So rainfall lasts, especially in Bangalore, this is very, very evident. Okay, rain just comes as a torrential rain for even a few minutes. Okay, and sometimes you have rainfall which will be like a drizzle, but it may last throughout the day. You see this in areas which are having the more rainfalls. In Karnataka itself, if you look at Bangalore, most of the time we get a heavy rainfall for a short duration, then the rain is over. And probably you may even see, because of that microclimate type of situation, you may see that in our BMSIT campus or surrounding area, it has rained very heavily, and then you move a little forward, and then you will have no rain in that area at all. The place would have been entirely dry. Whereas in some parts of the state, like for example, South Canara and places like that, you may see that there is rain that's happening, but it will be a light drizzle, but that drizzle will be lasting for many hours together. There is a difference in the type of flow that will happen because of this. So if you are having a heavy rain for a very short duration, the earth doesn't get the time to absorb all the moisture very quickly. And because of that, the runoff from that place will be much larger. Okay, but if you have very light drizzle rain, but the rain is lasting for longer duration of time, what will happen is the earth will be able to, or the soil will be able to, vegetation, soil, whatever component of that, will be able to absorb more amount of the water, and the runoff coming at that time will be significantly lesser than what would have happened in the previous case. So it makes a difference as to the intensity and duration of rainfall. Okay. The next one is area of catchment, the size of catchment. It is not only the size. The second point, you can see the slope and shape. So definitely, when we say catchment area, it is the area that is going to be contributing to the flow of water. So if you are talking about a particular drain or a particular sewer pipe, the area contributing the wastewater or the water, in this case storm water, to that particular drain. So if you have a larger extent of area, definitely the quantity of water that is going to come is going to be more. And if the area is smaller, the contribution will be less. But the major thing is with respect to the slope and shape of the catchment area. Suppose your area, it is having very steep slopes, especially of rocky soil, definitely the flow of runoff from these areas into your particular sewer pipe is going to be more. Now for shape, I have just drawn a figure. The next one, you can just take a look at that. These are two typical examples of what they call of catchment areas. Okay, they call one as the fan type of catchment area, and the other is called as a fern shape. And I tried to draw it in blue so that you can make out the, if you have a sewer line or a pipeline carrying wastewater in a fan-shaped catchment area, the distance that the water travels along the catchment to reach that particular drain or sewer is approximately equidistant in the case of a fan-shaped area. So suppose you have an inlet or some point where you are calculating the amount of runoff that is coming, you will have an almost equidistant distance. That is, even the farthest place the water is coming, there will not be a lot of time lag for the water to reach the particular sewer or inlet if the catchment area is relatively a fan-shaped area. But you look at the other case where I have tried to show you what a fern-shaped catchment area will look like. If that is the case, the nearby areas will start contributing very fast, whereas from the farther ends of your catchment area, for the water to reach the mouth of the inlet, it will take a much longer time. So catchment area, shape, slope, all these things matter or contribute to how much of storm water runoff is going to happen. So that is the next point. And then you have the nature of soil and degree of porosity. When I say nature of soil, it means the land of the catchment area. You can have various types. You can have rocky terrain, You can have sandy or soil, which is, got more retention capacity of water. You can have clay or dense soil, which will actually not allow water to seep in very fast. So based on all these factors, the contribution of runoff will depend on what is the nature of that. So you have a rocky terrain, the flow is going to be more and it is going to run off more. Whereas if you have, say, soil which is sandy or capable of holding the moisture, some of the moisture is definitely going to penetrate into the ground and it gets held up there. So the amount of runoff is reduced. Then there is another factor which is called as the initial state of the catchment. What we mean by initial state of the catchment is if the land has been dry for many days or for months together, we haven't had a rain. Okay, and then suddenly if we have a rain on one day, the soil is just waiting to absorb the moisture. Okay, and all the moisture that falls in the soil will be sucked up by the ground itself. But if it has been raining on and off frequently and your soil is also already saturated with moisture, then if there is a rainfall after that, probably the infiltration of water into the ground will be reduced, and that will give you more amount of runoff from that particular area. So these are the factors that contribute to the quantity of stormwater flow. And stormwater flow contributes to wet weather flow. Okay, so we have dry weather flow, which is the sanitary flow, and wet weather flow. Now, coming to estimation of stormwater, we need to find out how much quantity of stormwater is or runoff is being produced from a particular area. So if we look at the basic two methods that are available to us, we have one which is a rational method, which is derived keeping in mind so many factors. But here also the units of what we use to a particular characteristic or component of the formula of rational method has to be kept in mind, because the value of your result, usually discharge, we always represent in meter cube per second, but it is not compulsory that always we should have the discharge or stormwater runoff in meter cube per second. You can have it in many other different units, but so the components of the formula in what units we represent, your answer also will come from that particular values that you are putting in. So basically we have one method which is called as the rational method, and the other method are empirical formulae. In most of your, even in water supply, for that fire demand and things like that, you have studied empirical formulae wherein a formulae has been created taking into consideration so many factors, and the numbers and things like that have to be incorporated in the same values and in the same units, and only then you will be able to compute the value. In both these methods, the quantity of stormwater is considered as a function of area, intensity of rainfall, and coefficient of runoff. When I say area, it means the catchment area. The catchment area served by a given stormwater drain, okay, can be found by taking the map of a town, okay, and you can see the position of your streets, houses, playgrounds, and then when you make a complete set of map, the road map and things like that, the position of the sewers, etc., will be in place. And using this, we compute the catchment area that is going to contribute to each of these drains. The coefficient of runoff is nothing but how much water is flowing off the ground. So if I have a very hard, impervious ground, then I am going to have more of water running off from my surface. If my ground is more of porous, sandy, and that type of, or you have, say, forest land, lawns, more of open ground, in such cases, I'm going to have more amount of perviousness. So we use another term as synonymous with coefficient of runoff, and that term is called as impermeability factor. The stormwater flow depends on the imperviousness of the surface over which the rainfall is happening or takes place. If the ground is relatively impervious, and you can guess, in cities we call as urban flooding. The reason for urban flooding is we have concreted all our surfaces. Okay, the roads are asphalted and or concreted, the buildings are all of concrete, and the surrounding areas, if we have a small piece of lawn, well and good, otherwise that also will be covered with concrete. And the minute you have put concrete all over the place, you have made it impervious to water, and so the runoff will be more. So that is one major contribution for your urban flooding. So it depends on the imperviousness of the surface over which the rainfall takes place. If the ground is impervious, more runoff will happen, and the percentage of rainwater that is available in the form of runoff is known as impermeability factor or runoff coefficient. What I have told. So they are synonymous terms. Okay, impermeability factor or coefficient of runoff or runoff coefficient. Sometimes they will give it to you as impermeability factor, and you should know that it is same as coefficient of runoff. Queteling, I think you will find this word very familiar. Queteling has given us certain impermeability factors. I'm just reading it out so that you will be able to understand what these factors are. Okay, for various types of surfaces, he gives a factor, and that factor is maximum value reaching 1. So if you have a watertight roof surface, you can have a value of 0.7 to 0.95. So that means it's high runoff, it's nearing 1, right? So the value of the coefficient of runoff or impermeability factor is very high. More runoff is happening. So just keep these values in mind as I am telling you, so that you will understand which surface is impervious, or when a surface is impervious, how high the you can never, we will never take the value as 1, but nearing towards 1 is the maximum imperviousness. Okay, so just listen to what are the values that can be incorporated. So if you have a watertight roof surface, your impermeability factor can go from 0.7 to 0.95. If you have an asphaltic pavement is your bitumen roads, blacktop roads, 0.85 to 0.9. If you have stone, brick, or other types of pavements with joints, you can have impermeability factor going from 0.75 to 0.85. If you have blocks which are used, like, we make pavements or footpath with interlocking blocks, etc., with more number of joints, then the impermeability factor comes to 0.4 to 0.5. Macadam roads, that is without your blacktop, hard pressed roads, have values of 0.25 to 0.6. Then if you come to parks, gardens, lawns, so there your impermeability factor comes to 0.05 to 0.25. And wooded areas, that is forest area or such type of areas, you have 0.01 to 0.2. So if you have a city area which we call as built up area, you can conveniently take the value of 0.9 as your impermeability factor or coefficient. Okay, so if nothing is given to you and you need to assume a value, keep this in mind. How you will be able to select a value based on the nature of the ground. So sometimes the ground or the area will be described to you, and you will have to select based on these values which I told you. You should know for a wooded forest area, you can go as low as 0.2 or even less than that. Whereas for a built-up area, completely concreted surfaces, etc., you can go even up to 0.95. Okay, so there is also some factors that have been given based on what type of area it is. That is, whether it is a business area, whether it is a built-up area, whether the houses are very close together. Based on this, also impermeability factors have been suggested. Okay, but mostly the area, the intensity of rainfall, we already discussed. Intensity is the amount of rainfall that falls in mm per hour, which can be worked out from the rainfall records. Okay, and it also depends on how frequently storms or rainfalls are happening in the area. All the formulae, whether it is the rational method, whether it is the empirical formulae, all these methods use basically these three functions to arrive at what the values are to be, or the formulae are to be, for calculating the quantity of storm runoff. Now, just let us look at the rational method. Okay, so runoff from an area can be determined by the rational method. Hectares is usually what they take into consideration. There are some assumptions and limitations for this method. Just let us look at that quickly. So in the case of rational method, we can't always think that the precipitation is another word for rainfall, right? That the rainfall is not uniform. But like I told you, we have very good experiences in a small area surrounding even our college. If we take, we may experience heavy rainfall in one place, and a few even meters away, we may not have any rainfall. But if we think of that, to calculate or to arrive at a method, it becomes very difficult. Okay? So we assume that the precipitation is uniform over the entire basin. For example, I showed you a figure of what I drew for a fan-shaped catchment area. We are assuming that the same amount of rainfall is falling all over the place. Precipitation does not vary with time or space. So storm duration is equal to the time of concentration. Time of concentration will just come after this. I'll tell you what it is there. Okay. A design storm, it is a storm of a particular value of a specified frequency, produces a design flood of the same frequency. So these are certain assumptions that have to be done. That if there is a storm which happened, a storm is nothing but a rain in this case, it will allow that much quantity of runoff every time. So of same frequency, same type of rain will create the same type of runoff. The basin area increases roughly in proportion to the increase in length. So the length of because it is through the length that the flow happens. Now, time of concentration is short and independent of the storm intensity. I have to tell you what the time of concentration is, and then that will be very clear to you. Runoff is dominated by overland flow. The basin storage, whatever amount of water gets removed from the surface, is very, very negligible. The minimum duration to be used for computation of rainfall intensity is 10 minutes. We need to assume that at least the rain has happened for 10 minutes. Less than that rain cannot actually contribute much to the runoff, is what we assume. If the time of concentration computed for the drainage area is less than 10 minutes, then 10 minutes is taken. Okay, so in all our calculations, we will be taking that the rainfall happened minimum for 10 minutes. Now, this is your rational formulae. Okay. Q is equal to CIA divided by 360. So in this formula, when you are calculating, you will get Q in meter cube per second. C is coefficient of runoff. So like I gave you the values earlier, 0.9, 0.7, 0.6 or 0.2, depending on what type of area. I is intensity of rainfall. Okay, and I have put it in red below. In the above formula, your intensity of rainfall has to be put in mm per hour. So C is coefficient, it doesn't have any unit. I will be written in mm per hour, and your area of catchment will be written in hectares. If you divide by 360, the answer you get for the discharge of storm water will be in meter cube per second. The runoff coefficient depends mainly on the characteristic of the ground surface as porosity, wetness. That is already rained previously. Previous condition as we discussed earlier, porosity, wetness, ground cover, etc., which varies from 0.01. So low value as 0.01 also can be taken. So dense forest area and things like that, you can take it as 0.01. Wooded area, you can go all the way up to 0.95 for a watertight roof surface. So if the values are not given to you and the area is described to you, you should be in a position to take a correct assumed value for the coefficient. And if you use that and put it into the equation which is given above, you will be able to compute the runoff in terms of meter cube per second. That will be the stormwater.
Ma'am, why is it divided by 360, ma'am?
So that is why this is also called, this is, though it is an what to say, rational formula, they have taken into consideration so many factors and conversions in order that per second, okay, that 3600 which comes, right, 60 into 60, okay, by converting the factors, that 3600 gets reduced to 360 here. Okay, so I have not put in the what to say, the formulae how they have made. That is, when your area is in kilometer square, you convert that, then you convert your time mm per hour into seconds, and when you put all that into the formulae, 60 into 60 is 3600, isn't it? That 3600, because of your square kilometers and your hectares conversion, one of those zeros get cancelled. That's how the 360 comes there. So if you are using meter cube per second as the discharge formula, then there you need to put intensity of rainfall in mm per hour. Area will be substituted in hectares, okay, and you will be putting and then you will be dividing it by 360. So that 360 is nothing but your mm per hour rainfall is calculated as per hour. But you see here in your Q value, it becomes meter cube per second. Clear? Similarly, when you need to convert hectare and kilometer, you will have a 10⁴ value. And that, when the zero of your 3600, one of that gets cancelled with that value, and hence you end up with this formula. So in other words, that values reduces to 1 by 360, and that is why you have CIA by 360. Okay, so during the conversion, you reduce that value of 3600 seconds by 10, and that is how you end up with 360 there. So you can very safely use this value as it is without any conversion, provided you write Q whatever you get as in meter cube per second. Okay, because otherwise it becomes very complicated when each time you have liters and things like that, it becomes very confusing and you cannot learn it as a standard formula. So as a simple solution to arrive at the rational method, we remember the formula as CIA by 360. In some textbooks, they write it as AIR. Instead of that area, they write it as A, and instead of I, they use the word RI there. So in all the textbooks, you will find that the formula has been concise to this because it is easy if you remember it, so that all conversions will not have to be brought into the picture. So if you are representing it in this formula, then the answer for Q will always be in meter cube per second. C doesn't have an unit. I will be in mm per hour. Okay. And see, you just think of this mm per hour, and area is in hectares. So because of that, you arrive at that expression. Now, sometimes if you are taking a very large catchment area into picture and you don't want to calculate a C or a C value which is for a particular area alone, and you have forest land at one place, you have severe built up area at another area and things like that, you can do the averaging formula also. So C1A1 plus C2A2 plus C3A3, our common formula that we use for averaging out and getting the value. But provided you know what are the types of land that is there in that surrounding area, you can give a coefficient of impermeability or impermeability factor for that, and then you can, knowing the area of say wooded area, constructed area, etc., you can represent it by that formula. Now, since to understand how much quantity or rainfall intensity we need to use, there are sometimes conditions where you don't know how to compute the intensity of rainfall. So there are some general formulae. So in addition to the above formulae that we have studied, any one of this you can try to remember, or at least the first one for that matter. This is how we compute intensity of rainfall in mm per hour. Okay, so here if you look at the first formula, we will discuss the first formula. You have again Kuchling again has given a formula to compute the intensity of rainfall, etc., for depending on how frequent the rain happens or the storm happens of that intensity in 10 years time, 15 years time, etc. But if the first one expression, if you are able to remember, is more than enough. So in some cases, they will give you a situation where the intensity of rainfall is not known. In that case, you need to find out the intensity of rainfall. So look at the expression Ri, which is the intensity of rainfall in mm per hour, is given as, again, this is like an empirical formula, 25.4 into A divided by T plus B, where T is the duration of storm in minutes. Okay, and A and B are again constants. These values have been given for A and B by the United States Ministry of Health. Similarly, the British also has some formulae like this. In some other textbooks, you may find those type of formulae. Any one, if you remember how you can compute the intensity of rainfall, is more than enough. Any one of them is good enough for that. So here you see the duration of rainfall between 5 to 20 minutes. Constant A value will be taken as 30. Constant B value will be taken as 10. If the duration of storm is between 20 to 100 minutes, 20 minutes to 100 minutes, then the constant A value in the formula will become 40, and the constant B in the formula will be 20, and T will be the duration. So suppose I am saying in the case that I have a 10-minute storm. So if I have 10-minute storm, then my intensity of rainfall will be 25.4 into 30 divided by 10 plus 10. Similarly, if it is a larger storm, any one of these formulae will be used to compute that intensity, and that will be substituted in your formulae as intensity of rainfall. So in the above expression, I wrote as CIA. Okay, that I is intensity of rainfall here. Here it is given as RI. Okay, in many textbooks they have it as RI. So you can use either that, or the receipt Qchling has given you a formula to find out if it is a storm that is recurring once in 10 years, you can use one expression. If it is occurring in once in 15 years, they have given you a slightly different expression. So all these are again empirical expressions, but you can use them based on whichever situation is given to you and you are not given. So 90% of the time in your numericals or problems that are given, they will give you the intensity of rainfall. But sometimes they will just tell you a condition, like an open-ended. For example, in a place in Mangalore. Okay, so a condition like of a catchment is like this, and how do you compute? So in such areas, they are places with heavy rainfall. So any of these formulae to compute the intensity of rainfall you can use. So in an area where you are expecting rainfall to be for a larger duration of time, take the second value, 20 to 100 mm, 100 minutes, and you take the value of A and B on a higher scale, so that your intensity of rainfall will be a larger value compared to what is for a smaller duration of rainfall. So that is how you will be taking it. So it's an assumed value based on the characters of the land that they are giving you. Now, next, we were talking about time of concentration. Time of concentration of flow in a sewer pipe or a drain. What do you mean by time of concentration? So this term can be defined as the longest time, okay, without any unreasonable delay that will be required for one drop of water to flow from the farthest point of the drainage area to the point of concentration, or the point where you are going to estimate runoff. So I drew a fern-shaped catchment. So the tip of the fern, from there, if you have to reach a point at the bottom where a drain point is there, and you want to compute the runoff at that point, the time taken by one drop of water from that farthest end to reach the point where I want to compute the runoff, that is called as time of concentration. If I want to tell it to you in other words, it is the time required for the flood discharge to reach the maximum limit. So I'll just go back to that figure for a minute to show you. See, now just look at this. Now, when one drop of water which is falling at this tip takes all that, and I'm computing the runoff at this point, by the time all the water from all these areas would have already reached here. So that is why, in other words, it can be called as the time for the flood discharge to reach the maximum limit. And that is what is the definition for your time of concentration. Is that clear? Now, time of concentration is basically composed of two components. One, we call it as the time of entry, and the next part of it is the time of flow. So time of entry into the drain and the time for which it flows inside the drain to the point where we are computing the runoff. So the time of entry can otherwise be called as inlet time, and it is the time taken by rainfall to run from the most distant point of the watershed to the inlet of the sewer. Okay, and time of entry is represented by TE, and it is the area which contributes to that particular sewer. If it is usually very small, time of entry will become faster. So commonly, a normal practice is to assume that it is the time of entry is going to be between 3 to 20 minutes. If the slope towards the drain is very steep, then you can use the value of the lower value or 3. And if you have grassy and slightly undulating land and things like that, undulating in the sense depressions and up, so the water will get held up at places where there are grassy plots and things like that, you can use the higher value. Okay, so that is time of entry. The time of flow is the time required for the flow of water in the sewer to the point where we are measuring. So inlet of the sewer is the point where the water is entering into the sewer, and time of flow is the water flows within the drain pipe to one point where I want to know what is the runoff at that point. So the time of flow is the time required for the flow of water in the sewer to the point under consideration. It is computed, or we can find it out by assuming the velocity of flow in the drain and by measuring the length of the drain. So you know that distance divided by velocity will give you the time. So entry point has happened at 0 length, okay, and it has traveled say 2 kilometers. Then 2 kilometers distance divided by the velocity of flow. 2 kilometers, you make it into meters, 2000. Say velocity of flow is 2 meters per second. 2000 divided by 2,000 seconds will be the time. So like that, you can compute the time of flow. The time which is computed like that is usually less than the actual time for the flood to reach the point of concentration, because the point of concentration is when the maximum flow has started from the sewer inlet because of the time required for the sewer to flow full. So the time required to fill the sewer is known as time of storage, and the total time of concentration is taken as time of entry plus time of flow. Time of concentration is given by the representation here as TC, time of entry is given as TE, and time of flow is given by the term TF. Now, I told you there are empirical formulae. Empirical formulae are given directly, you just have to put them in place. So usually you will not be computing the quantity of storm by empirical formulae unless asked. So here you have the Berkeley-Ziegler formula. This is again developed by the US. There is the McMath formula. All the abbreviations are here. Metcalfe-Eddy formula. There is no other way other than learning the formula as it is with whatever values or whatever units are to be given. So empirical formulae are used only based on certain conditions, and most of these conditions you will see have been derived based on the area intensity of rainfall. There is the Fanning formula. Usually this Rives formula, we use it in many of South Indian conditions. You can see that they use the Rives formula there. The Dickens formula is also used in India. Remaining are all mostly derived from the US and UK based situations. So these are empirical formulae that you will be using. The formula has to be learned as it is and you need to use it. Okay. Now, coming to quick recap on what we have looked at today. Dry, wet weather flow. What are the factors affecting dry weather flow? What is meant by storm water? So, storm water, what are the factors affecting the flow of storm water? What are the factors affecting dry weather flow? Okay, whether it is the rate of water supply, population, the type of area, whether it is industrial, residential, mixed, all that, and how much of infiltration happens into groundwater. Stormwater, the catchment area, the nature of the ground, the intensity and duration of rainfall, all affect the stormwater flow. The estimation methods are basically two types. The rational method, where I gave you the formula Q is equal to CIA by 360. But when you use that formula, Q is got as in meter cube per second and A is in hectares. The intensity of rainfall, I in that case, is taken as mm per hour, and C, which is the coefficient, is based on the area under consideration. You can go for a forest area as low as 0.01, and if you are given a tight roof, concrete roof, you can take it as 0.95 divided by 360. Again, I repeat that 360 is because of the conversion of hour, mm per hour, into seconds, and because of the conversion for hectares to be converted into meter cube. When you convert it, you lose one of the zeros of your 3600, and so you end up with that formula. Yeah. Those estimation methods are either the rational method or the empirical formulae method. Empirical formulae are being given most by Western countries, but the Dickens formulae and the Rives formulae can be used for Indian considerations, but they have to be used as given to you with the values for intensity and area in the units as used. Time of concentration is very important because it is the time at which you expect maximum flow, which is composed of two components, the time for entry and the time for flow in the sewer. And when you are considering a particular point in the sewer, the time of entry plus the time of flow will give you the time of concentration. So give me a minute.